Hey everyone, welcome to Stewardship Leader. We're here to help church leaders think biblically and lead wisely in matters of money, generosity, and discipleship. Today, I'm excited to welcome John Pizaferro, the founder of My Well Ministry, a nonprofit that helps churches save millions of dollars in processing fees and reinvest those dollars back into kingdom work. John's story is one of innovation with a higher calling, using technology to serve the church, but not profit from it. So, John, welcome. Thank you so much for being on Stewardship Leader today.
Hey, Leo, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
Well, I am too. Before we dive in, I really want to start with understanding Malwell's mission, but I also want to start with your story. It's so important to understand and really allow our listeners to understand your story. What inspired you to start My Well, and what problems were you trying to solve for churches?
I was inspired to start my well while sitting at church many years ago and listening to our pastor share a story about this guy who owned a well drilling business. Uh, 3 4 months out of the year, he would go to Africa and drill wells in Africa for free. So he was making his money here in the secular world, and then he was using his business to honor God. And it just struck me. I thought to myself, well, what's my well? Like I
Mm,
don't own a well drilling business and I don't think I can drill a well. So I realized my well is payments. I mean, I grew up in payments. I've been in payments for 30 years. So I thought to myself, how can I serve the church with what God has blessed me with? My well is payments. And I decided to go to my church and say, hey, I would like to process all of our transactions for my cost. I don't want to make any money in the church. I'm not going to lose any money, but I'm not going to make any money. So I took all the profit out of it.
mm,
So quickly, that church started saving 6 figures a year, and that allowed them. It was a difficult time years ago. It was a difficult time in the economy, and the church was actually laying people off.
mm.
So it allowed the church to be able to not lay off two people, and that really set me on a path to think, okay, what more could I do? And when you want to talk about the problem that we were solving for, when I started looking into how much the church was being charged by these secular companies that were processing for the church, I realized that they were, in my view, taking advantage of the church. And I say that because, if I process for a car dealership or a restaurant, you name the business, that was the size of the church, I was finding that these companies that were processing for the church were charging three, four, sometimes 5 times more than we would be charging in the secular world. Like a normal business would never put up with what those costs were. But the
Right.
church was putting up with it because they didn't know any other way. They didn't realize that they were being overcharged. So that became my holy discontent.
Well, I love it. I love it. I mean, God obviously moved your heart to see something that was happening that could be done better. There's nothing wrong with profit, whether it's a for-profit or nonprofit ministry. There's nothing wrong with making enough profit to obviously provide an income for people, health benefits, all those things that come with running a company. But like you said, what you saw is a gross overcharging of the church of all things. And
And that's what we
unfortunately,
continue to see, by the way, Leo.
yeah, it's
It hasn't
unfortunate
changed.
because I do think we partner with several giving platformers as well, and I know some of these folks really well, and I know their heart is to help the church and to do whatever they can. I'm not an expert in this by any means, so I don't know what the fair charges, all that. Obviously, you do, but I love the fact that you looked at this and said, "Hey, I don't need another company. I don't need to make more money, but I do feel like God spoke to you. What is your well? What is it He wants you to do with the excess, with your talents, with what He's giving you to steward?" And I love that you took that and said, "Can I do something to help the church?" And that's super exciting to me, and that's why I was excited to hear about your organization and partner up with you guys. So love it, love it. Let's get into some of the innovation that you guys use. How does My Well nonprofit model allow you to reinvest in technology and stay ahead of what churches truly need?
Well, being a nonprofit means we don't answer to shareholders.
Mm,
A lot of those companies, probably some of the ones you're thinking of, they may have, fine people working there, but they all report to shareholders, and shareholders want to make what? They want to make profit and more profit and more. That's why they invest their money in those companies. So we don't answer to shareholders. So we can double down on innovation because we can. And so, you know, that's the difference between a nonprofit model and a for-profit model. I mean, I don't want to get into what those companies do with the profits, but I would think the more money we can keep in the church and not in a company's pocket would be the better.
Yeah, understood. Understood. So let's talk about the tech that serves the mission at churches. Can you share how innovation like native mobile giving inside like Rock RMS, which you guys use, and web native crypto and stock giving have transformed the giving experience for churches and givers?
Yeah, so probably everybody listening to this knows what native means. Sometimes I didn't know what native meant early on. So, native just means that it's in rock. So, non-native means we're talking about a redirect. So, like for example, Leo, if I was going to give you a phone call and I called you directly on your cell phone, boom, I'm going right to you.
Hmm.
If I called through your company or your receptionist and they put me on hold and then they had to redirect me to you, that's an opportunity for failure. So, any of the companies besides us that are not native, they're redirecting. So they're leaving rock. So they're going outside of rock and then they redirect back into rock.
Okay.
So, and that's just potential for problems. Certainly, I think you'd rather be native than not be native, right? So that's kind of the deal there. And yeah. So we're the only native mobile giving with Rock. We're the only native crypto and stock giving with Rock. So we're the closest company there is to Rock. Period.
Okay. I like it. You're talking about like just a seamless experience and integration, right? So let's get to the next thing. Why is effortless integration and donor migration such a game changer for churches looking to simplify their giving?
So the question is, why is a? Can you ask the question again?
Yeah, yeah. Why is effortless integration and donor migration such a game changer for churches looking to simplify their giving systems?
Got it. Got it. Got it. So let's get something straight. It's always better to get the data. It's always better to get the data from the other donor management company and have that migrated over. Unfortunately, a lot of those companies will not release that data. We're going to get into that later, I think, in the
Uh-huh.
conversation. So I won't go into that right now, but it's always better to get the data. But in the meantime, we have a full implementation and migration team that has built individual tools to move some of the data. Even if that company won't give you the data, we can move some of the data now. And then we use our implementation and integration teams that are with you from the beginning to the end. We have second mile support that just goes that second mile, and they'll be with you all the way through the full integration and migration.
I love that. That's good. I mean, obviously, customer service and making sure that, like you said earlier, the church sometimes just because it's not their world, they have to interact with these kinds of tools and platforms, but they don't know what they don't know. So having a team that's willing to walk them through that is so crucial. Who really has their best interests at heart. It's not trying to gain the most out of them, but actually just help them to have a smooth transition and incorporate that. I've been part of different churches and that migration from one platform to another has happened. And I've also had stewardship friends who have gone through that. And it's a very difficult process. Not only are you disrupting everything that who are already giving have set up, but if you don't do it well, it could literally you know, cause people not to give or people forget to sign up again. So it's like, oh, I forgot, I haven't given in months, and it's like I didn't even know we switched. And so these things are the way you do that, and the migration is so important. So glad to hear you guys take that as a priority because if you don't, obviously that's going to hurt the church. Let's dig in a little bit more about the ministry side because I know I've spoken to your team. We had an event in Ohio just the last week, and one of your employees was there, Claire, and she just did a great job of not only speaking about what you guys do to the group that was meeting, but also just supporting what we do. And I know I've spoken to I met with many of your team, and I just see just a heart to serve in your team, and I love that. So I know it's not just a tech company; it's a ministry. You said that it's a nonprofit, obviously focused on helping the church. So how does having a team that has served in churches, because I know some of them have served in churches before, help you connect and support pastors and those that are involved in the giving side of the church?
Well, Dale, you're absolutely right. We have many the majority of our staff has worked at churches at some point in their career. And I just think it helps that they understand the tension between mission and resources. They get that better. So they make a better partnership. As one ministry and another ministry, we just make a better partnership than a ministry and a private equity company. We just get them better. And I think that the proof's in the pudding. So you'll see it in your experience with us.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Like I said, I've met your folks, so I agree with that. All right, so let's talk about stewardship and transparency because this is something that's very important to us. Um, you're a technology company. There's a lot of things, like I said, the church or the people that are in the church that are dealing with this technology may not be aware of. So, how do you build that into what you guys do? No hidden fees, no markups, and why is that such an important value? How does it model biblical stewardship for churches and donors alike?
Okay. Now we're getting into it a little bit. I like to talk about the economic truth triangle.
Awesome.
There's kind of an economic truth in business that you cannot have the absolute best technology and the best service and the lowest price.
Mm,
In the
okay.
business world, you can't have all three of those, right? How do you solve for that? You become a not for profit and you don't take the profits out of the company. So we can have the absolute best second mile service and support. We can have the absolute best technology and best partnerships. And we can be the lowest price because we don't take any profit out of the company. We don't have to pay investors and shareholders and owners and what have you. That's the way that you get around that true triangle.
Hmm.
And then when you start talking about your question about transparency. So the fact that we don't charge a profit, we're proud of that. And we want to be transparent about that. So, and anyone who's not transparent about their fees, I would beware, right? So, we're going to stand before holy God one day and have to account for, what we disclosed and what we didn't disclose to his church. So I would just say that, you want to be as transparent as you can be.
Sure, that makes sense. Very good. All right, so you mentioned this earlier, and you said we were going to get to it. So let's get to that. The data, who it belongs to, and why this is such a. I know for you, it's a passion. Many churches don't realize how often donor data gets held hostage. I think is the way you thought about it. So why is data ownership so important? How does my well ensure ministry retain control and freedom of that data?
All right. So, Leo, when you go to your church and you do what all of my well believes is a spiritual act of worship, we believe that giving is a spiritual act of worship.
Hmm.
That's part of how we worship is with our tithes and offerings.
Correct.
And so when you go to your church and you give your tithe, who are you giving that to?
Well, hopefully you're giving it to the Lord through the church. That's the way I.
Correct, right? So when you make that offering,
Mhm.
you believe you're giving that money to the church.
Mhm.
So do I. So does everybody. Everybody at church believes, hey, I'm giving my money to the church. There is probably a majority of these companies, probably some of who you've interviewed, that don't believe that. They believe that you're giving the money to them and then they're giving it to the church. So you
Mm.
give it to them, they take some of the money and then they give it to the church. So what they then say is that data is not the church's data, it's their data. So your name, your credit card information, of course, it's encrypted, so it's secure. I don't want to freak everybody out. But all of that information, your name, your credit card, your expiration date, all that stuff, how much you give, when you give, all of that information that you enter in, like for me, I give once a month. So once a month, it automatically comes out of my checking account, and that's what I do. So they know once a month, that's when John gives. And, they know how much I give and they understand all that. So the church, probably every church believes that that's their data. They believe, hey, those are our donors. Those names of those people are ours. That credit card information, that's ours. But many of the for-profit companies believe that it's their data. So they're not going to release it to the church. What does that mean? So they hold that data hostage. So if these companies would share that data like we do. Like if somebody wanted to leave us, churches don't leave us, but if somebody wanted to leave us, we would give them all their data and they could take it with them and they can go wherever they want to go. But when they don't give that data, it makes the migration more difficult. That's why we had to create these migration tools and staff up migration and implementation teams so that we can help these churches move, even when the company that they're with will not help them move and give them their data. I mean, I can go on because it's really frustrating. And if I were a church and I was with a company that would not let me have my donors' names and my donors' giving information, I would be pretty upset. And I guarantee they all think it's their data. But once they put the call in and say, "Hey, we want to move to my well," that's when they find out, "Oh no, we can't give you that data." And again, I've been in this business for 30 years. There's no legitimate reason why they cannot give you that data. And if they tell you there's a legitimate reason, then they will lie to you about other things as well.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense to me. Again, it's not my world, it's yours, and I trust what you're saying. That information, it's their donor, so why would it make that difficult? Obviously, no company wants to lose business, lose clients, but
But
um,
as a church, it's not a client,
yeah,
and that's the problem. That's the problem is that the hottest the hottest vertical in payments right now, right, in the payments business. I'm not talking about just in the church. I'm talking about in the fintech and payments. The hottest vertical in the United States right now is churches. That's the
and
hottest vertical. Everyone and their mother wants to process for churches. Why? Because they can charge them double, triple, quadruple and lock them up by taking their data and holding it hostage. That's got to change.
yeah. Well, there are definitely players in the space I know because I've spoken to some of them who are definitely not. They don't have a heart for the church. They're like you said, they're in it for profit. And again, that's okay. I'm not against someone making a profit. Business obviously has to have some profit. You have to make enough to be able to keep your employees paid and all of that. But again, it just depends on what's their motivation and are they being fair in their pricing. And from what you're saying, they're not being that. I don't know
Well,
that.
I agree with you. Leo, I totally agree with you that, I've always thought to myself, there's profit. Profit's not a dirty word.
No, of course not.
Profit's not a dirty word, but obscene profit on tithes and offerings to me is not okay.
Yeah.
And that's why I started this.
Yeah. I think it's also, one thing that I think about, I don't work on staff at a church. And when I did, I was not in charge of the financial transactions or any of that. But I would think that it's important for a church to understand who they're engaging with when it comes to this. Because if they don't understand, if it's not a good, I think of just a scriptural basis of getting into a covenant, into an agreement, into a partnership. And I think about that, like if you get into a partnership and you're what scripture talks about unequally yoked, meaning you have different values, different goals. And if that's the case, I think it's really important for the church to understand and educate themselves to understand that, hey, maybe this organization can do everything we want them to do, but are they really for us? Are they really, going to treat us fairly and charge us what's reasonable rather than what's, like you said, obscene? And I think that's a responsibility for the church as well. But,
And the church they didn't have a choice in the past, Leo. So,
mm,
in the past, my well wasn't here. My well was not doing donor management. We were just processing transactions for the church. We really have only gotten to the point where we're as good or better than everybody else in the space about a year and a half, 2 years ago. So they didn't always have the choice to go with a partner. They had to
mm,
go with a company that was going to
yeah,
take advantage of them. They didn't know they were taking advantage of them. It's not their fault, but there is a new option now that we need to get more awareness about. And I think you're going to see more and more and more awareness about MyWell because it's just too much money being taken from tithes and offerings to go to shareholders and private owners. People should not be getting wealthy off of tithes and offerings, and they are.
yeah. Like I said, there's a balance there, and like you said, obscene profit is, yeah, that's a problem. I understand that's a problem for me as well, and especially if the organization is communicating or expressing that their value is to serve the church, that they are mission driven. If it's just a company that's trying to make money, well, okay, at least I understand. or I might understand as a staff person who I'm dealing with, and I could either accept or refuse to do that, to have that agreement. But I understand. I mean, this is even though online giving has been going on for a long time. Um, it, well, I say a long time. It's really kind of picked up. It's obviously since COVID, it's really exploded because everybody had to go online, and I can see how there was less choices at the beginning, and now it's like you said, it's just like it's been flooded with potential companies out there that see the profit. And yeah, that's troublesome. It's troublesome for the church, especially if they're not informed. So I'm grateful for what you guys do, and I'm grateful that you are holding that banner to help establish what is a proper charge for these kinds of services, so the church doesn't get taken advantage of.
Well, it's been happening forever, right? I mean, when you go back to Jesus's day when he flipped the tables over, I mean, he did it because of exchange rates, because the exchange rates on the offerings and sacrifices were not fair.
Mm,
If you want to buy a dove outside the gate, it was one price. If you want to buy a dove inside the gate, it was three times more, four times more, five times more. What did Jesus do? So it's the exact same thing, only worse now. It's not better, it's worse. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars a year, billions and billions of dollars. That's what we're talking about of tithes and offerings. And I think if donors knew that, I think they would be upset too. I think they would be like, wait a second, I didn't know that I'm giving my money to some processor that's taken some of it and they're going to keep my donor information. They're not going to let my church have it. I
yeah,
think it's, I think the donors would be um, upset to say the least.
yeah, no doubt, no doubt. I understand. I mean, we have a giving platform that we use here at CSN. We have some donors that give on a monthly basis, and I see what the cost is. I don't think it's extravagant. It's exorbitant at this point. But again, I don't know what is and what isn't. So
Well, if you
I
just said 1%, right? I mean, generally speaking, we're saving churches more than 1%.
okay, yeah, yeah,
So if you're doing a lot of volume, 1% is a lot of money. And it's usually more than 1%, but I don't, want to get out there. It's a humongous amount for big churches. But you know what? Small and medium sized churches, my understanding of good stewardship is, any money that we can keep in the church, we should. So if you can save $5,000 or $50,000 or $500,000, whatever you can save, that's
yeah,
money that goes into ministry rather than the pockets of some investor.
yeah. No doubt of that. So let me ask you one other question before we end today. What does eternal ROI look like to you? How do you define kingdoms through financial stewardship?
So I look at that two ways. I look at that from a personal perspective. From a personal perspective, I would say that eternal return on ROI is our second mile support. Just knowing that we're giving our guts for God every day, and our team is too. I mean, myself and every member of our team, I can tell you, are fully devoted followers of Christ, and they're giving their guts every day. And to me, on the personal level, the eternal return on investment is can't get any better. Then I go to the business side of it and I think, okay, ROI, return on investment. Well, let's think about it. We've saved the church $71 million since we started doing this.
Yeah,
So that's $71 million in missions, church camp, taking care of pregnant moms. It's missionaries. In a lot of cases, it's not laying people off. That eternal return on investment is pretty powerful. So you have $71 million back in the church. By the way, we're just getting started, right? Uh, or that $71 million could be in somebody's pocket. If it were your tithe and your donation, would you rather it be in somebody's pocket or would you rather it be in ministry? So, but and it just because we're not for profit, we can reinvest, we can have the best technology, we can have the best service and still charge the least. I mean, it's a win-win.
I would agree. That sounds really good. Well, John, I love how my well is helping churches because, like you said, if churches are able to hold on more to the giving that's the tithes and offering that they're receiving, and use that for ministry, whether that's to expand the ministry, to keep the people that are there that are doing a great job and spreading the gospel employed so that they could continue to serve people. I mean, that's a huge win for the church long term. Obviously, it helps spread the gospel. And so I love how you guys are helping churches steward those resources and doing it with integrity and excellence. And that's amazing. It's also a very practical expression of the gospel. And that to me is probably the most important aspect of this. So for pastors and stewardship leaders listening who want to learn more about or connect with your team, where should they go?
Well, they should go to our website, mywell.org.
Okay.
Um,
We'll put that also
and,
in
uh,
the
and, I think they can check out a case study there. They could talk to some of our staff and get a referral from some churches that are using MyWell, have just recently migrated a long time ago, find out about savings, find out about service, find out about technology. I think it's important that they understand that we are able to have the best technology and the best service because there's kind of a little, what the competition likes to say is, well, how could they have the best service and the best technology if they're not for profit? And it's exactly because of that. It's exactly because we're not for profits. But yeah, so that they just go to our website, check it out, and it'll I think enlighten them a little bit.
awesome. Any last word, anything else you wanted to share before we end today?
Obviously, you could tell I'm real passionate about this.
I would
So
be surprised if you weren't.
yeah, so it's you know again, profit's not a dirty word. I'm not against anybody else. I'm just for the church.
Mhm.
And the church doesn't always have to be a place to take. Sometimes it could be a place to give, even if you're a business. And so um, w- that's what I was able to do. And, this is my best for his highest.
That's awesome. Well, I love your passion and your mission, John. I thank you for stepping out in faith and doing something that I'm sure wasn't easy. You were probably pretty busy already in what you were doing. You didn't need to start another organization and company to do what you do, but it's obviously helping churches, saving them money, helping them to keep more for ministry, and that's definitely an eternal work. And I appreciate it. Thank you
It's
for
all
being.
about our staff, so, to be really honest, like, I don't do that much in my well, I can get on and talk about it, but I'm not the person who you're going to be dealing with. You're going to be dealing with people way better than me and way more qualified than me. And that's our staff. I mean, we have the best staff in the business, and that's the bottom line. And we're able to pay them because we don't take profits out, so I can pay them top of scale, and people don't leave my well.
That's good. That's good. Well, thank you, John. Again, thank you for being on. I appreciate your time and sharing everything about my well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leo. It was a pleasure.
Now, for you that are listening, thank you so much for joining us today. If you'd like to go deeper in learning how to build a culture of stewardship and generosity in your church, I'd love to invite you to explore the resources available at Christian Stewardship Network. You'll find free webinars, practical articles, of course, this podcast, as well as live and virtual events, all designed to help you lead with confidence in this area of stewardship and generosity. You can also join our CSN membership, where churches lead um, by example and help each other gain access to hands on tools, monthly collaboration calls, and supportive community of leaders who are walking this journey out and can do it with you together. So if you want to know more, visit christianstewardshipnetwork.com. And again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Stewardship Leader.